There we go. Hello and welcome
Hey,
to
Charlie.
Nansen. Hi, James. Good to see you, and great to see everyone else joining the call as well for our third webinar that we've been running recently. So this is the first that we've been hosting this year. So I hope all of you are having a great start to 2025 and that your bags are looking great and might look even better after joining this webinar today. So this webinar will be focused on how you can invest like a crypto fund in 2025. And we'll share a little bit more about what we'll be covering today in just a moment. But drop your GMs in the chat. This webinar will be recorded as well, so you can catch up on it after on YouTube if you need to. So to share a little bit more about myself, I lead growth here at Nansen on the investor side. I work with a lot of crypto's top funds to essentially help them make more money with data and to get the most out of using Nansen's on-chain analytics. I've been in crypto since late 2016 and have been with Nansen for 3 years, but I've been working with funds in crypto for the last 5 years. So excited to share some of those insights that I've learned while working with many of these funds with all of you today. But over to you, James.
Thank you very much, Charlie. So my name is James. I got into crypto in 2021. I first started working for some real-world asset protocols and then started doing some analytics for real-world asset protocols. And my original roles were in community operations, and I had a nice mix of analytic skills and community management skills. And then last year, I came on board with Nansen into their Alpha Discord as a community manager and also a CSM for our professional user base. So I spend a lot of time training some of our pro users. Some of these guys are fund managers as well. So hopefully I can share some insights that I give to them that help them power their great trading decisions and investments as well. So from there, I'll pass it back to you, Charlie. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, James. Appreciate it. So we'll be covering 3 things today. The first is how you can be in the know of what funds are buying, selling, and holding in 2025. We'll also give a bit of what funds are and why you should care, and how following them can potentially enhance your crypto investments as well. We'll be looking at how you can then use Nansen to track the activity in real time of what top crypto funds are doing. And we'll also give you some insights as to how other Nansen analysts and fund managers use Nansen to help you to get the most out of your subscription as well. We do have a little bonus that we're going to share today as well. So if there is a Luma link, which we will drop in the channel there in YouTube, if you register for the Luma event and submit your Telegram handle, as we can see on the slide there, you can go into the draw to win a free Pioneer subscription for 3 months, which is worth about $400 and might really help you to win on chain for the next 3 months. So we'll be choosing that lucky winner within the next 24 hours. So be sure to submit your Telegram in that Luma link. Also, another thing that's not mentioned here is we will also send you a list of 10 crypto funds that James and I have been, we've noticed that have been absolutely smashing it on chain lately. Some funds perform better than other funds. So we are going to give you that direct alpha in Telegram as well. So you know exactly which funds to follow in Nansen after this call. So definitely drop your link, your Telegram handle in that Luma, and we will get stuck in for today. All right, I am going to share my screen. Bear with us. It takes just a little moment for this to come up. But just while this loads, in the last webinar, we found a token which was called Zeno that did a comfy 8x. It's a token on Solana. We've now got 2 webinars back to back, where the first webinar we found a 13x and an 8x. The last one we found an 8x. So who knows what we will discover today by tracking what some of crypto's top funds are doing on chain. So for those of you that might be new to Nansen, to give you a quick overview of what it's all about, Nansen is an on-chain data tool that's used by investors to help grow their portfolio. So really you can use Nansen for primarily 3 things. The first is around discovery. How do you discover new token opportunities? And how can you discover interesting addresses, whales, or funds that you might like to track on chain? Then once you've done that discovery, it's about performing due diligence. That token that you've just found, how do you know if that is a good opportunity or not? And how do you know if that address that you've just found is actually an address that is winning on chain, that is actually making money in the crypto markets? Then once you perform that due diligence, you've potentially entered a position. It's also about helping you to defend your positions, so to know when to sell at the right time. So Nansen supports a number of different chains, including many EVMs and Solana. But really what powers those 3 workflows, discovery, due diligence, and defense, is the wallet labels. So we have 350 million wallets that are labeled across those chains. And some of these labels might associate a wallet with an entity, an interesting KOL. So those KOLs, those funds that you know or might be familiar with already, you can use Nansen to see what they're buying and selling in real time and potentially replicate their activity so you can become a better crypto investor yourself. There's also a concept of smart money in Nansen, which is represented by this little nerd emoji. So we have 350 million wallets that are labeled. The most profitable 5,000 of them are assigned that smart money label. So it is really the 1% of the 1%. However, you can isolate it even further to see just what funds within smart money are doing. So funds makes up a chunk of those 5,000 wallets. It's not all of it, but you can filter smart money activity just to see what the most profitable funds are doing on chain, which can be really, really powerful. So some of you might be asking, well, what actually are funds and why should you really care about this? So funds on the overall are a company or an entity that will take money from investors and do their best to make more money for the people that have deposited the funds with them. So let's just say that you are a high net worth individual. You might be a multimillionaire and you're looking to get more exposure to the crypto markets. However, maybe you're not an investor or a crypto trader yourself and you don't know what to do. You might then give your funds to a fund so that they can make more money on your behalf. So you're essentially putting that trust in someone else and that expertise. And now with Nansen, you can actually see what those funds are buying and selling. So rather than you needing to be a multimillionaire and depositing money into funds directly, you can just use Nansen and get a subscription for a lot less and see what they're buying, see what they're selling, and do the same on chain. So funds have many different strategies. So you have some funds that are more venture-based. So venture funds are providing capital to startups. So they're giving money to early crypto projects to get off the ground. And then you also have liquid funds. So funds that are actively buying and selling tokens on the secondary market. So maybe some of these funds are even holding meme coins, and some of them might be your favorite, which we will dive into today. But what's key to know is funds have different strategies and that you'd want to track them differently. So why should you care about following funds? So some of you that might be familiar with Nansen, and if we look at some of these different labels here, you'll know that some smart money investors enter and exit positions like every day. Funds often have quite different behavior. Funds are generally holding a token for maybe a few days, maybe up to a few months on the upper end for a liquid fund, where a venture fund may hold a token for several years. So if you're someone that isn't chronically online yourself and you're not wanting to be like looking at your positions every single day, following funds might be a better solution for you. And we're going to show you some really interesting workflows which will highlight this. But what's key to know as well is that this is only really possible in crypto. This is not very possible in the traditional financial space. To get insight into what funds are buying and selling in real time is thanks to the beauty of the blockchain, and thanks also to Nansen, who have labeled these addresses so we can see which addresses are fund addresses and potentially might be more interesting to us as those that are not. Okay, so that is a quick overview of what funds are all about, what Nansen is. So I'm going to pause here and hand it over to James, who has been tracking a specific fund recently that has smashed it on a few different tokens. So I will pass it over to you, James.
Thank you very much, Charlie. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see this.
Usually takes about 10 seconds-ish to pop up, so yeah. I trust it's on the way. There we go, James. That is working now.
Okay, perfect. So Charlie gave a great overview of funds. I'm going to go into a bit about how we look at funds on Nansen itself. So the first thing we're looking at here is Sigil Fund. They're active on Ethereum and Solana. And right now, I'm just taking a look at one of their Solana wallets. What I'm able to see here is their historical token portfolio, which can be really useful to see how much assets they might have in a given wallet over time. We also get a summary of their trading abilities here for this particular wallet. And we also get to see some of their balances. Other interesting things that we might be able to see are counterparties, who they interact with, maybe who this fund, what exchange this fund likes to use most. And then if we want to dig a bit deeper, we can go into their transactions and P&L. So before I go a bit deeper into this fund, we might be wondering, who are these people? So let's just take a quick look at their website. So here on their website, we can see their team, their CEO Pavel, their CIO Fiskantes, and lots of other members. And we have links to their Twitter bios in case we want to, their Twitter profiles in case we want to follow them online. From there, we can jump over to this funds page. And this gives a bit of a description about what Sigil does and who they are. So one of the key things to know here is that they aim, I'm just going to highlight it here, apologies. They aim to give their users a return of -70% if there is a market crash, but 2,000% if we get a crypto bull run. So this is what they promoted quite a while ago, and this is what they were advertising to their potential investors. And if we take a look down here, we can see how their performance has done versus Bitcoin and gold over the past since 2019, 2020, and we can see that they've done extremely well. So this might be one of the reasons we might want to track them on chain. So now I want to show, I'm going to jump back into Nansen, and we're going to just search sigil. And we can see we can look for their Solana entity. So these are their Solana wallets or their EVM wallets. And now I've got an entire view of all the EVM wallets that we have tracked for sigil in this entity profiler. So down here, we can see all of their balances, which is quite useful. We can see that their biggest position by far is virtual. They hold some MOG, and they have some other smaller positions down below. So we might be interested in finding out how do they perform with sigil or with virtual. So one of the best ways to do that is jump into transactions tab, because we want to find the specific wallet that holds virtual. I'm just going to filter by the virtual token and do it over the last over the all-time time frame. And let's see. Perhaps I should have done, yeah, I'll change to one here. That should load a bit faster. Okay, perfect. So from here, we can see that they have one main address that has been trading virtual. So from there, I can right click and I can go into profiler. So now I'm going from viewing sigil as an entity and viewing all of their EVM wallets to just viewing this wallet specifically. From there again, I can right click on virtual and I go into wallet profiler for token. Now, wallet profiler for token allows me just to see what this wallet has done with this one specific token. And we recently had this new feature added where we can see what are the inflows and outflows of this token relating to this wallet. So B is for buy, S is for sell, but W is actually for withdrawn from a SEX. And you can see it in the label that appears as I hover over it. And then tokens out is just means there was an outflow from the wallet. So it could have been moving to another wallet, or perhaps it was being deposited to an exchange. So we can see that they absolutely nailed this trade. They got in when virtual was around 38 cents, and just recently they had outflows to gate.io, which it indicates they were selling, and they did this right on the day that it topped. So they created, or not necessarily they created the top of the market, but they perfectly timed the top of the market for virtual. So this is again one of the reasons why you would like to follow funds and track what they are doing. Let's see, we can also, if we scroll down a bit further, we can see how their balance changes over time. Let's say the main differences between these two charts are, this will show us what was being done with the token at certain points in time. So is it a buy? Is it a sell? Were tokens withdrawn from the exchange? Or we can come down here and see what was their total balance over time. And we can see it peaked out here, but as prices began to rise again, they began to reduce their position size. And they still hold quite a large amount of virtual. As we can see here, they hold 4 million. And we might be wondering, what is the current state? How much are they up, let's say? So again, we can jump back into the profiler for this wallet. We go over to P&L. We can see the P&L of all their trades here. But if we jump into all of their realized trades here, but if we jump into unrealized P&L, we can see that they are up approximately 3.3 million After a total buy of 1.8 million and realizing 3 million already, they are still up 3.3 million. So this is a pretty impressive trade. They hit this one right on the head. And we can also take a look at some of their other stats here. And they have a 56% win rate, which is actually quite good relative to most other wallets. If you can get over a 50% win rate, you're actually on a good track, particularly in crypto. So then we might be wondering now, we have all this information. We know this is, let's say, a good wallet. We might be interested in seeing what other trades they might make. So if we jump back to our overview, we can create an alert here. And if we enter, let's say we want to see only when they move with reasonable, decent size, we can say anytime there's greater than 100K moving in or out of the wallet, we want to receive an alert. So I'm going to create the alert. From here, I would click into this and it would bring me to the Nansen Telegram bot, I would follow the instructions. It would give me a chat ID. I can input the chat ID in here and then I create the smart alert. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how you can track a funds, how you can use Nansen tools to track funds. And then at the end, once you've decided that this is a good fund that you should be tracking, you can set up some smart alerts so that when you're away from the screen, you can still get notified when they make big moves. So from here, I think, Charlie, I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Great. Thanks for that, James. I imagine their portfolio manager will be very happy to have made 3.5 mil on that trade and still yet to cash in a further 3 mil. So to top out literally the day of the market just really goes to show why tracking funds can be so valuable. I think it's one question that I always ask myself as an individual investor myself is like, what is my edge in the market, right? If I am trading against these guys, it's like, do I really trust myself to have more alpha than a team of like 20 other crypto investors? And that's why then using Nansen to track funds can really give you their edge to help increase your edge as well. So I think just that as a concept is just why you can really like use a lot of these labels and fund activity to become a better investor yourself. But I wanted to spend a bit more time on Sigil because they're quite an interesting fund. Like some funds that you see on chain are quite conservative and maybe they're just investing in like Ethereum based tokens, blue chips, etc. But then you do see some funds that are like much more degen, and Sigil definitely falls in that category. And we can take a look at their fund on Solana. They're managing about 15 mil of tokens on Solana at the moment. And to even see that they're holding tokens like Fartcoin, etc., alongside some other blue chips like Pengu can be really quite unique because these guys are, sophisticated teams. They're well educated, and then you see them holding a token like Fartcoin. I think it's quite funny. But something that like a bit of a trend I've noticed while tracking funds few years is that some of these funds gotten a bit better at obfuscating their buying and selling activity on chain. Some funds are now spinning up new addresses to enter positions so that it can be a bit harder to track them. So why we will send over these list of 10 funds to you if you submit your name on the Luma link is because we're going to send you those 10 funds that aren't obfuscating their activity so much. So where you can really use Nansen to follow in their footsteps. But one way that you can use Nansen to see potentially these addresses where they might be hiding some of their buy activity is by looking at the counterparties to see which other addresses in crypto they're receiving funds from and also sending funds to. And this can be a really great way to discover other addresses. Like here we can see 2 Sigil fund addresses. we can also see a DevMon's address, who are actually another fund that are associated with the folks over at Sigil. So it's quite expected to see some of the funds flowing between these two entities. But potentially, if you weren't so familiar with DevMons already, that might then encourage you to look into it a bit more, especially given that they themselves have made 4.5 mil over the last 90 days. I'm sure they're very happy with that. But there's another interesting address in here that I noticed, which is Fiscantes. So when you looked at Sigil Fund earlier, James, I will also just share my screen to give me 1 second. Here we go. We can see that Fiscantes is actually the CIO. So he is very, very exposed to a lot of market alpha, and you might like to check him out on Twitter as well. He's got 100K plus, or just short of 100K followers there. But to see that there is a Fiscantes address here is very interesting. Potentially, this might be his personal address that I might like to look into a bit further. So if I click into this guy, we can then see a bit more about where, like, the positions that he is holding, his P&L as well. And here we can see, like, he's made quite a lot of money on Hat, Pippin, Fartcoin, Zero Bro, some of these other like tokens that we've seen on Solana, but he's still got quite decent positions, and one in Trump, which I'm sure is a token that all of us are super familiar with the craziness that has been happening since Trump launched the meme coin. But what's interesting is when you can find these addresses of not just the fund, but also the fund manager, because the fund manager, this is his personal wallet. So it's more likely that he is potentially taking a bit higher risk, given that he's playing with his own funds rather than pooled investor funds. And something that I really like to do to keep a track or keep note of some of these addresses is by using our custom label filter. So here I can say I have a label which is fund manager, which I love to apply to a number of these addresses, so that when I see these guys again in Nansen, I know that this is potentially an interesting individual that might have more alpha than I do. If we look at the counterparties here, we can see another Fiscantes address, which is actually a smart money address, who has made 1.7 mil in P&L over the last 90 days. I don't know what all of your P&L looks like. I wish mine looks like this, but we can also take a look at this individual wallet and see that he is also made quite a lot of money on Hat. He's made quite a lot of money on Trump already, and still has decent positions in some other Solana tokens. So it is pretty interesting to find folks like this. And now that we've spotted this guy, I will also add a fund manager label to Fiscantes. What I can do, which I'll show you shortly, is create an alert for any addresses that have this fund manager label. So rather than needing to juggle 20 plus different alerts for interesting addresses you find along the way, you can easily just add this fund manager label to any other addresses, and you'll start being notified of their activity as well. So I will pause here just for a moment, because I wanted to give just a quick reminder of that we are giving away one Pioneer seat for 3 months, which is access to everything that you've seen in this webinar today. And all you have to do to register for that is to submit your Telegram into the Luma, which is a link that we will drop in the chat. So you'll be notified by email if you are a lucky winner for this. But what we'll also do via Telegram is we're going to get in touch and share 10 of these really interesting fund addresses with you, so that you know, or give you some extra homework, really, so you can track their activity, potentially follow in the footsteps of their investing team, and smash it in 2025. So we will drop that in the chat in just a moment. But if you are unfortunately not a winner, but you've found this webinar really interesting and you'd like to get stuck in and follow other funds in the space to find your edge in the markets, feel free to plug in the code WEBFUND3 on checkout as well. And that will give you 10% off any paid plan, monthly, annual, Pioneer, Professional, and we can win together in 2025. So let's take a look at it, some other interesting funds or like fund managers as well. So I've got another example that I can share here of a venture-based fund who are in Singapore, and their name is NGC Ventures. If I look at the team, we can see that Roger Lim is a general partner. So really, Roger is one of the big decision makers over at the fund. They have a decent team here of very sophisticated investors. They're a fund that's well known in the space. And you might be wondering, well, what is Roger holding? Maybe it's Roger as a fund, or maybe it's Roger as an individual. So what we can easily do is search for Roger in Nansen, and we can see his activity on either Solana or EVM as well. And we can see here that he's got a decent balance as an individual investor, $5 million. And he is sitting on positions like ARK, AIXBT, Mobi, Grift, Pippin, etc. So potentially you might be asking, well, does Roger know more than I know as an individual investor? And given that he runs a fund, it's probably pretty safe to assume that he is exposed to some pretty interesting alpha. We could also take a look at some of his other addresses as well. So it's really interesting when you're then able to bridge the gap of off-chain and on-chain, where you might look at some fund websites, you might then chuck their names into Nansen, and now all of a sudden you have all this great alpha about what these funds or fund managers are buying and selling on-chain. So it's key to also understand that, like, again, there are different types of funds. So some are venture-based, some are liquid-based. And if we use an example like Aave, a token that's done very well this cycle, Smart Money tab, I see what these funds are doing specifically on one token. And this can be quite helpful to build conviction around an investment opportunity. Maybe it's to enter, maybe it's to exit. And here you can see that there are quite a lot of funds holding significant positions in Aave, Blockchain Capital, Defiance, Block Tower, DACM, etc. So we've taken a look at this example in a previous webinar, but I want to double click into this a bit more, specifically with the lens that funds have different strategies. So some of these funds here invested venture capital into Aave, and therefore are like much longer term investors. They've likely got into their positions like very, very early, even before it was Aave was listed on the market. But then you see other funds like DACM here, who are a liquid fund generally. And you can see that I've actually applied a liquid fund tag to DACM already. So when I notice that liquid funds are entering and exiting positions, as an investor, that generally gives me a little bit more alpha than it does to track a venture-based fund. So what can be really interesting is finding those addresses that are more liquid-based, and those are the 10 also that we're going to share with you on Telegram after this. But personally, I noticed that DACM were entering a Aave position with size a number of months ago down around here, which is a chart that can give you really good insight into building conviction around whether smart money believe in the project or whether they don't. So the total number of smart money balance was increasing, and the total number of unique holders was also increasing. Personally, when I saw DACM investing $1 million, I also myself bought the token at about $85, and the token's now at $350. And the primary thing that triggered me to purchase Aave at 85 was DACM entering that position with size. So again, just a personal example of where this can be very, very powerful. But it's also really key to track venture funds in the space too, especially from a defense perspective. So let's take a look at onchain, another sort of blue chip DeFi token that is been around Ethereum. And if we look at the smart money tab, we can see that Binance Labs are a massive holder in 1inch. They have 75 million tokens, where the next fund only has about 7 million tokens. So if you were a 1inch holder yourself, you're probably really going to care when Binance Labs either add more to their positions or exit their positions. And what can be quite interesting as well is seeing like how much of the supply does this one wallet actually hold? And we can see that it's 5%. And Binance Labs invested in 1inch. It's expected that they're eventually going to cash out this position. And let's just hypothetically say if they were to sell off all on the same day, they sold 5% of the market, and everyone knew that it was the Binance Labs address, it's not going to give the market much confidence. So what you can do is you can set an alert on Binance Labs activity so that you can be notified immediately when they might look to sell in future. But also it can help you to build conviction around if there's a future unlock coming. So what usually happens with these venture funds, they'll provide startup capital, but they won't get their hands on the token immediately. They might get a small percentage of the tokens vested to them on like a yearly basis, let's say, for an example. So what we can do is we can actually see that there are many other vesting contracts here in the balances. So we know that there are going to be other unlocks happening in future. And if funds sell off their positions after receiving the token, once it's vested, it's not going to give the market much confidence, especially given that these venture funds are like they provided the capital, but they're also really involved in their operations. They generally provide like advisory services, guidance. They introduce people to the right people, so on and so on. So we can actually look at who is going to be the recipient of these vesting contracts, and I can bring the contract side by side to take a look at who's previously received from this contract. And based on that, like how can that inform my investment decisions? And here we can see that, oh, we've actually just removed that feature. Okay, so anyway, we can see that there have been 3 or a few different cliffs here of where the token has been released from this contract and released again. And I actually know that this is the Binance Labs address receiving from this vesting contract. So let's take a look at activity. And we can see their balance over time has only increased. So they've been holding onto this position for years now, since actually January 2022. They then had more unlocks from the vesting contract, more unlocked again, and they've done nothing since February 2023. But if you're a 1inch investor yourself, you're really going to care when they eventually do, given that they have 5% of the circulating supply, and they were one of the venture partners very early in the journey of 1inch as a project. So what I might do now is, given like I know that this address is quite interesting, I can then apply a custom label and drop the venture fund label there, where for DACM, which we previously looked at, we saw that I had applied the liquid fund label to their address. So once you really build out your Nansen journey with a number of these custom addresses, and you set alerts on these custom labels, you're really just going to 10x your investing experience. So otherwise, I will pause here. James, I know you've got some examples up your sleeve of where funds have smashed it. Also, potentially some examples of maybe some insider funds. I know in our first webinar, we noticed that one fund was buying with size a token the day before it was listed on Binance, and the token went from 20 cents to $4. Another classic example of why tracking funds is really key. So I'll pass it over to you to share some interesting things. Might just take a couple seconds for James to join. There he
Hey,
is.
Charlie. Thank you very much for that. And yes, I do have some insider funds that I would like to show you. But first, I want to stop on our friends over at Sigil because they've been doing they've nailed some really big trades. And one in particular that has become very popular lately, and that has become a sole point of hatred for traditional finance participants is Fartcoin. So I'm just going to show you what they managed to pull off with Fartcoin and how this ties into what type of fund they are. So we can see here that they had huge amount of inflows in very early on, back when Farcoin was probably around 3 to 4 cent, and it at its all-time high hit about $2.45. So that's a massive gain for them, and it's great that we were able to see this on chain. And if we look over here, we can actually go into the wallet where they received it from. And we can see that they used a DCA feature on Jupiter to slowly buy in pretty small transactions over time. Like we can see here that some of their buys were only $126, but they did this over a number of hours consistently. And now let's say even that $126 is worth 6,000. But they bought a lot more than $126. We can check what their overall profit was on Farcoin. Again, if we jump in here to Profiler, we go to the P&L tab, and we can see they bought about $200,000 of Fartcoin and sold 6.6 million worth. So that was an incredible trade for them. And that kind of shows they're open to trading high risk plays on chain. But at the same time, if we take a look over here, they have been trading blue chips as well. We can see here, I'm in token god mode for the Helium Network token, HNT. And if I go in here, we can see that they have been trading HNT. They got in about 60 to 90 days ago. And just recently, they moved the funds out to a Meteora HNT USDC liquidity pool, where they're providing one-sided liquidity, which actually means they're exiting. So the whole point I'm trying to show you here is that some of these funds anyway are not one-dimensional. They can trade shitcoins and they can trade blue chips on chain, which is why they can be really useful to follow. So now to get into something that's maybe a little more interesting for some people, I'm going to take a look at Sky9 Capital. And this is the fund that we have seen do a bit of insider trading. And the token that they were able to get, the drop on was THE, Thena. Thena is a big DEX on BNB. I believe it's the biggest, if not one of the biggest. And right the day before THE got listed on Binance, these guys started buying up with reasonable size. And the next day it got listed and it did about 20x. And maybe you could say they just got lucky here. But one other thing we can notice in their current portfolio, we see MGP and CKP. And both these tokens they bought about a week before they were promoted on the new Binance Alpha program. So this is quite a good sign that they have insider information on the Binance and BNB ecosystem, and they knew this was coming. They looked to buy it before the announcement. On the announcements, there was a slight pump, but it retraced pretty quickly. MGP is actually down a bit now, but they're still holding. So maybe they know that there's something coming down the line. We're not too sure. That's still speculation. There's definitely no financial advice there. But the whole point is they are trading off insider information, because we can see repeatedly they have predicted with their on-chain movements what Binance is going to announce or what Binance is going to list. One other fund I would like to show, and I think this is a really good example of what long-term strategies we can see funds using. And this is Placeholder. And they nailed the ACX trade. So at first it looks like, where did they enter? But if we begin to zoom out, we begin to see that they accumulated ACX over quite a long period of time. And this is a great thing to see, and it's a great way that we can build conviction, because if we see a fund slowly accumulating over time, it indicates that they have a long-term bet. And there was a good stretch of time here from about February to December of just last year, that they didn't touch their position. So they really held out for what would be considered long-term, at least in crypto, to get their profits from here. And again, if we were to go a bit deeper, if we wanted to see how this trade performed, we can jump into Profiler, go to the P&L tab, and we see they realized $12 million on this trade. So this was a massive trade that we could have seen coming over time on chain due to this fund's trading activity. So from there, Charlie, I believe you might have a couple of other examples that you might like to share. So I will pass it back over to you. Charlie is just taking a few seconds to load in there.
Oh, there I am.
Hey,
Great.
Charlie.
Thank you for that, James. Yeah, I've got hundreds of examples. The beauty of Nansen is you see these things every day, but I'm also conscious of time, and I'm wanting to keep some time for some Q&A, because we've had some really great questions come through. So if you're looking to get your hands on this data, yeah, we obviously have the 10% discount off any paid plans, which you can use the code which will drop in the chat in just a moment, but it is Web Fund 3, as you can see there. So that includes a discount off the Pioneer or Professional plan, monthly or annual. We are also giving away a 1 3-month Pioneer plan to one lucky individual that has submitted their Telegram handle via the Luma registration form. So we'll be in touch within 24 hours for this. But also, what's not mentioned here, again, just as a quick reminder, if you drop your Telegram, we'll send over a list of 10 funds that James and I have noticed that have been absolutely smashing it in 2025 so far. And you might choose to track their activity in Nansen and follow in their footsteps to become a better investor yourself. So we've got about 5 minutes remaining for some questions that I believe will pop up in just a moment. Here we go. Any special channel for Pioneer subscribers? Yes, so we are currently revamping our main Discord server, and we're looking at how we can drop a lot more interesting on-chain data and insights in the Discord. So we'll drop a link to the Discord in the chat in just a moment as well, and that's how you can stay in the loop. We also have 2 Telegram channels, which we've just looked to add more value to as well. The first is a Nansen News Telegram group, so you can stay in the loop on interesting on-chain movements, interesting events that we're hosting, etc. And we also have a Nansen Research Telegram group. So we have some interesting developments coming on the research front. But all of you should be able to get your hands on more of Nansen's research over the coming weeks. So join those Telegram groups and stay in the loop of what is happening. Okay, next question. Only the sub winner gets the fund list. No, everyone that submits their Telegram in the Luma will get the fund list. But again, you can use Nansen, have a subscription, and you can find all of these addresses yourself. Like these funds are labeled in Nansen already. So you can really easily discover them, search for them. It's not just the only way is to get them via Telegram. So the whole purpose of Nansen is that we label these addresses. So that is what you can get your hands on if you jump on with that 10% discount code. So the hot contracts section, yeah, I might save showing this for a future webinar, but hot contracts is an interesting feature that's available on the professional plan. And hot contracts is a great discovery tool where you can see what interesting contracts are having large inflows or outflows. So this could be a great way to surface interesting like LP opportunities. So if you're more of like a yield farmer, it can also be interesting to track any unlocks or like vesting cycles from different multi-sigs. There are various benefits on chain to the professional plan, but we also have an alpha community of smart money investors all looking to win on chains. It's a great way to be around other prominent folks in the space. And also you get access to our research as well. So hot contracts is just one of the many benefits available on professional. Next question. Oh, it seems like some of that might have cut off. James, I might hand this one over to you. Does Nansen have any section of hot coin picks based on the data that they have? Oh, and like suggests probable coins which may boost. I imagine boost might mean price going up.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say we have any sections that are promoted by Nansen that Nansen is saying these are good coins to buy, but we definitely have sections that can help you find what tokens are hot. The two that come to mind first are our token screener, and I'm not sure if I'm able to share my screen here. But basically, the token screener will allow you to see what tokens have the most inflows, volume, traders, things like this, and smart traders as well, and volume created by smart traders. So that's one way we can find what tokens might be hot. And then the other one is what's trending on Nansen itself. So it's in the token section as well. And basically, if you're in the token section, if you look in the top left corner, you can see an overview and trending on Nansen tab. And if you click into the trending on Nansen tab, you can see what people are searching for based on whether they're a free user, a pioneer user, or a professional user. So that can be one way of finding what has a lot of mind share. What do people keep looking for on Nansen? And that could be where trading volume and attention is shifting towards. Hopefully that can give you a good starting point. So we can move on to the next question. Can Nansen track VC seed investments in early stage Web3 projects? So to some degree we can, but a lot of the time the way we approach it anyway is that we find a vesting contract and we can see the funds coming out of the vesting contract. We don't necessarily know what price these funds were raised at, so that's kind of a different question, but we can definitely track the movement of funds based on vesting contracts, and that's actually often how we can attribute names to different addresses. If we see a specific address and it matches portfolio positions of a specific fund, and then we see them interacting with that fund as well, well, then we're able to determine that that is most likely this fund. So we can track them, but not necessarily the stage at which they are raised. I believe Crypto Ranks is a good platform for that.
Yeah, just to add some color on that as well. Nansen is an on-chain data platform, and these transactions that happen in like the VC angel world aren't transactions that happen on chain. So you can then use Nansen to see when tokens may unlock from a contract that was settled on like the primary market. But Nansen can also be used with other tools like Tokenomist as well, where you can then track future token unlocks ahead of when those tokens are actually moving around on chain. So I find using those two platforms together can be very powerful. But otherwise, that is the last question for today. So thank you all for joining us on this session that was specifically on tracking funds. We're looking to host these calls every month moving forward. So look forward to seeing you all. Drop your GNs in the chat. And thank you again for joining. Quick reminder again, you can use the WebFund3 promo code at checkout to get 10% off any paid plan. But otherwise, I will see you at the next webinar, and all the best for your investing over the rest of 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. See you next time.